Well, hope your Tuesday is off to a good start, Central Georgia. We're going to join you live to kind of break down what happened over the last 2 days, what lingering impacts that we're still seeing, and what's in store for the remainder of your 7-day forecast, maybe even a little bit beyond that. However, it is going to be pretty good news after 2 straight days of some active weather in Central Georgia. So let me turn the volume down on my little earpiece right here. This is the scene as we go out and about all day on Tuesday. Clear blue skies, a little bit of a haze off in the distance, but overall it is just going to be a splendid day and a well-warranted quiet stretch of some sunnier weather. Temperatures are beginning their climb up to the 60-degree mark now. This morning we dipped as low as the lower 40s in some areas over to the west and the northwest. Butler, Thomaston, and Forsyth, I believe, saw a 43, maybe even a 42, a little bit lower at the coolest point of this morning. And typically after we have these frontal boundaries move through, kind of coming in from the northwest, those are going to be the first areas to receive some of that cooler air that can filter in behind them. So temperatures getting close to the midday hour, about mid 50s, upper 50s, a lot cooler in northern portions of the country. And that's a little bit of a taste of the air that we're going to see push down into the south and the southeast. However, not dealing with temperatures in the 30s by any means, like up in Indianapolis, St. Louis, and Lexington in Kentucky. Take a look at your dew points. This is a map that we showed throughout our severe weather because we had plenty of moisture available associated ahead of this frontal boundary. We were talking dew points in the upper 60s, even getting into 70 in some spots. And when you start to see that dark green, that really muggy color, that's when it starts to feel like the air that you can wear outside. And we've seen that at times be present over the last week or so. Not the case anymore. Not only did cooler air filter in, but also drier air is taking place. Dew points somewhere in the 40s all across central Georgia, and they will remain that way until we get a shift in wind starting to come out of the south or the southwest, and that's going to propel some moisture back into the forecast. Satellite and radar picture, a glimpse of some clouds off the Atlantic coast of the United States, really states like Georgia and South Carolina. It is all quiet here in the state of Georgia, Alabama, up in Tennessee. And yes, it does come at a very good time. Let's take a look at your surface map and see where that front finally and currently sits. Well, you can see it has moved off the Atlantic coast. Southern portions of the front are still lingering with some rain showers down in South Florida. However, it does look to finally be a quiet stretch on the eastern half of the United States. This is the same frontal boundary that brought our active weather over the last 2 days. It kind of just sat over the state of Georgia and many other states. However, it also, take it back to last week, did impact areas like Missouri, Arkansas, Tennessee, Kentucky, southern Illinois, getting into the lower Midwest. Those states saw their fair share of tornadoes, flash flood warnings, because that front sat over those states for probably about 3 or 4 days. It is finally just now moving offshore, and I'm sure everyone is very relieved to hear that. However, you do see this frontal boundary attached to this low pressure center that is centered over in western Virginia, southwest Virginia. That is another frontal boundary, and that was what we were talking about yesterday during the morning show. It was way up to the north, and it was up in the Great Lakes states. That has continued to push southwards. That was one of the mechanisms that was helping drive this frontal boundary that caused all our severe weather finally off the Atlantic shore. So what that's going to do is going to continue to give us a reinforcing push of that cooler and drier air up to the north over the next couple of days. So taking a look at yesterday's almanac, we normally always kind of preface the temperatures. Well, I will talk about it a little bit. Only a 17-degree spread between the low and high temperatures yesterday. We did somehow reach that 70-degree mark even despite all the cloud cover and the rain. I want to turn your attention over to the precipitation box. We've mentioned it a couple times all throughout the beginning of this year, that year departure, so where we should be compared to average for rainfall at this point during the year. This number has been very far negative, even as low as about -4 inches at times. We've received a good amount of systems over the last week or two that have brought us some rain, but this one virtually sitting over the same area for 2 days straight. It has finally put us back really close to average for this time of year. Still only about 0.2 of an inch below average where we should be in terms of rainfall. In Macon at Middle Georgia Regional Airport, we recorded 1.24 inches of rain yesterday, but that's not taking into account the rainfall totals from the day before. This is right here, your 48-hour rainfall totals, and you can see that many areas topped out somewhere in the 5-inch mark. The highest total I found was up here on the northernmost edge of Hancock County, getting up into Greene County. 6.7 inches of rain. There was a little patch of pink that I clicked, and that's going to be the same like these areas around Auburn on I-85. And then over here around the Columbus area, those areas definitely lucked out with the most amount of rain. Probably caused some brief flash flood warnings. However, this one was so local up in Hancock County, it didn't sprout any of those. Other areas that are pretty notable, South Bibb County. So similar to where we were talking about that tornado-warned storm on Sunday, 5.5 inches of rain over the last 2 days, 5.7 down in Warner Robins in northern Houston County. And they are not alone. 5 inches on the west end of Taylor County, 5.6 inches down around Montezuma and Macon County. However, you will notice as you go down to the south and the southeast, you're seeing some green colors, some patches of blue, and a little patch of yellow that stretches from Wilcox County up through Dodge into Lawrence County. Those areas did see maybe about 3 inches of rain, and that was really over the course of one day. However, most areas did only see about an inch or two of rain down to the south and the southeast, giving you a really good depiction of where that front stalled and where the rain really sat over, because these areas up to the north and the northwest, kind of if you follow my finger right here around Dooley County, all the way up through southern Houston, all the way through Twiggs, up through half of Wilkinson, and then the northernmost edge of Washington County. That line all the way up to the north and the northwest. Those areas got virtually continuous rainfall over the last 2 days. And then finally, the front did kick back into motion and moved over our southernmost counties. But very impressive rainfall totals over the course of 2 days, let alone maybe getting into a week. This would definitely be a good amount of rain to receive. So you can guess that we probably have a little bit of some flooding concerns, and I'll get into that just after this. But now that we do stand only 0.2 of an inch below average for this time of year, you see January was rather dry, February was rather dry. March was a pretty dry month. However, we did get that system that brought us some severe weather last Monday, and that was March 31st. So right at the buzzer, we got a big system that gave us a good amount of rain and put us just above average, about 0.4 of an inch above average. Well, here's how we stand so far for the month of April. Almost 3 inches above what we typically should be at this point in the month of April. Now, we do have a dry stretch coming in, so this number is expected to decline. And the rainfall totals for average, the beginning of April, I mean, we're only about 7 to 8 days into the month. So obviously, we're going to be well above average with the amount of rain that we did receive. So finally putting us back on par for our 2025 rainfall totals, and we'll continue to see this fluctuate month to month. But this also does line up. March and April, typically our severe weather season. System after system is kind of coming in every couple of days. So those are typically some of our wetter months that we do have in the calendar year. Let's take it over to your aerial flood warnings, and we have received some good updates with this as of very recently. The Flint River over here towards the west, we did have some aerial flood warnings around Taylor County, Crawford County, up into Upson County. Not seeing those anymore, but then you take it over to the Okmulgee and the Oconee. So these green shades are going to be areas where the river levels are above average and even getting well above average. The Okmulgee here in downtown Macon is very high. I did see it when I drove into work this morning. So up into Jones and Jasper, a little bit upstream here from downtown Macon, the Okmulgee River is very high. And then you can still see that all around Bibb County, the Okmulgee itself, and even any surrounding tributaries, that's where we're getting some of those above normal water levels. And that does exist for Bibb, Crawford, northern edge of Peach, getting into northern Houston, the western edge of Twiggs County, here in Bibb County. And right there in real time, we just saw one of those aerial flood warnings trimmed off upstream into Jones and Jasper counties, so that is good news. Hopefully we continue to see these flood warnings expired and canceled. And then over to the east, the Oconee River, so the third river here in central Georgia, just below Baldwin County, still the southern southeastern edge of Baldwin County, all the way along the border of Wilkinson, Washington, getting into Johnson, and then northern Lawrence County. That's where the river levels are going to be high. Now, if you do live farther to the south of where these aerial flood warnings do currently exist, you can expect these green shades to continue to move downstream, as obviously that water has to continue to flow downstream. So areas like Bleckley County, Pulaski County, more so into the Dublin corridor along the Oconee and Lawrence County, and then anywhere down to our far south, you could see some of these shades pop up. However, they could be allowed to expire and the river levels may not be getting as high as it does move downstream. There's a combination of factors that can contribute to that, and a lot of that is just evaporation with all the sunshine that we will have. So maybe the water levels won't rise too much the farther south that you live, but immediately south, you can probably expect that water to continue to rise over the next day or two. So speaking of that tornado warning that I did mention, we do have a preliminary warning. So what preliminary means is just kind of that initial warning. We haven't fine-tuned all the details yet, and I did actually just talk with someone at the National Weather Service that said this is still a preliminary warning, even though they've given us the specifics, written up a report on it. And this tornado did touch down in a very little kind of sharp edge right here. A little bit of a right angle of Twiggs County's line going up into Bibb County, and it did cross over into southeast Bibb very quickly. And then we're 247, I believe. No, this isn't 247. This is Highway 23 actually meets the Bibb County line. That's where this tornado crossed back into the northwestern edge of Twiggs County, and it eventually did dissipate just north of Dry Branch, all the way up here. So I'll have to go back and look at some of those road names and put it on this graphic. I kind of just threw this together when I saw the report this morning. But what they've found so far, damage is indicative of an EF1 tornado. 90-mile-per-hour winds, and the track was almost 8 miles long at 7.94 miles. So while it doesn't look like it's really a very long track, this does go a greater distance than our longest twin tornado as of last week. That was in Peach County, Houston County, and then into southern Bibb County. So this tornado did have a little bit of a longer track. And while this report is preliminary and things still can change, and they probably will change, I don't believe the intensity of this tornado is going to change because they've already found damage markers that are indicative of an EF1 tornado. So how they kind of rate these tornadoes, they go in, they assess the damage, and then whatever damage is indicative of the strongest rating tornado, that's what they give the classification to. There are obviously some damage points that are indicative of an EF0 and probably some that aren't indicative of a strong enough tornado to even be classified as an EF0, but some are indicative of an EF1. So that's what the classification of this tornado will continue to get. It's obviously not going to go down in intensity, I do believe, and the threshold for EF0 to EF1 is 86 miles per hour. So I do believe we're going to keep this EF1 status, and then you have to get up to 111 miles per hour to get up to the EF2 category. I don't think we'll quite get up there. That would be a big increase in intensity. So I think we'll just get some fine-tuned details, maybe about the specific path, maybe a little bit of a longer track if they think some damage does exist a little bit before the beginning of that red line, or a little bit at the end of this red line into Twiggs County. So that's where it does stand right now. Only one confirmed tornado with the 2 days of active weather we did see. Yesterday we had another tornado warning pop up in Wilcox County, and I don't think it quite made it up to the county line of Pulaski and Dodge County. But we didn't see reports of any damage besides some branches that had been scattered about on some roads. So that's always a good sign when it's not confirmed. When we give those tornado warnings, they are confirmed by the radar, but we need real people to kind of confirm that it was on the ground. And then we also need a damage survey to kind of back that up and reinforce the confirmation of that tornado. So we did have 2 tornado warnings in central Georgia with this, and a good amount of severe thunderstorm warnings, and a lot of damage and a lot of high waters. That was really the big thing with this, as that front kind of sat over the same area for 2 days. So now let's get into the future. That's kind of breaking down what we saw and kind of by the numbers, at least with the rainfall totals. For today, a cooler day. So I mentioned that cooler air filtering in behind that front and then bringing back the sunshine. I gave you a glimpse of it in downtown Macon, but a high temperature of only 68, not even getting to the 70-degree mark, and actually below average for a change. See the average high up here in the top right of your screen, 76 for this time of year. So falling 8 degrees below average. And this is quite a change of pace because we were talking about highs in the upper 80s for a good stretch of about 4 or 5 days last week. So it will be a little bit cooler, and obviously 68 and sunny, nothing to complain about by any means. But since we have had that stretch of some upper 80s, getting an early preview of summer, this temperature is all relative to what you have been feeling, and what you have been feeling is that early preview of summer, a little bit of that swampy air, some pretty warm temperatures flirting with 90. So a high of 68, especially paired up with a northwesterly breeze that can get up to 20 miles per hour at times throughout today. That is definitely going to be a cooler day, but still a very, very pleasant one. We'll take it through future view very quickly, just showing you that there's going to be nothing going on, maybe a few clouds in the picture, so maybe not necessarily clear blue skies, but overall a sunny day. Wednesday will be the same story, some clouds maybe in our eastern counties. We'll see how that holds together from model run to model run. Thursday is kind of what I want to turn your attention to. This is at lunchtime. Clouds are up here to the north, even seeing some sprinkles up here behind the banner up in western North Carolina. This is going to be the first image of our next approaching weather system, and it won't get here by Thursday. Thursday afternoon, the whole day on Thursday is still going to shape up dry. It's looking like around the midnight to 1 a.m. timing that we actually see some rain start to approach. This is 1 a.m. going into Friday, and obviously not a lot of darker colors invested within this. So we're going to see some scattered showers, maybe a steadier or a heavier rain. I'm not going to rule out you hearing a rumble of thunder or two. Overall, no severe weather looks to be in the forecast with this. A fairly organized line of showers, I will say, some breaks in it. But as this does move in, take a note of the timing. This is going to be the overnight hours into the early morning hours when our temperatures are a lot cooler, so it's not going to have as much to work with as it would back up to the north and the northwest. So we're taking a look at your master's forecast. I was showing this for the practice round earlier this morning. I went ahead and did the forecast for you tomorrow, because most of you, if you are going to Augusta, you have already made your way up there and you are enjoying all the fun up there at Augusta National Golf Course. So your forecast for Wednesday for the par 3 contest, going to be a pretty chilly start, so make sure you grab a pullover before heading out the door. You'll probably need that until somewhere in between 10 and 12. That's when temperatures will finally get above the 60-degree mark and going to top out in the upper 60s, so still on the cooler side, but a beautiful sunny day. Going to start out partly cloudy, but the clouds will decrease as you go throughout the day, and a bit of a breeze out of the northeast. Some gusts up to 17, maybe 15 miles per hour, but once again, those are also decreasing as you go throughout the day. Taking a look at your afternoon highs back here in central Georgia, low 70s tomorrow, still on the cooler side, still below average. The only day for the next 5 days I have above average will be Thursday, when we start to see a slight shift in the winds, bringing back some moisture and some warmer air into central Georgia and really the entire state of Georgia as a whole. So Thursday going to be a beautiful day, a little bit more spring-like, and then after that frontal boundary that brings our rain showers for early Friday morning, that is going to drop our temperatures back down. Another reinforcing push of that cooler and drier air for Friday and Saturday. Highs in the low 70s Friday, and then down into the upper 60s once again for your Saturday. So taking a look at the morning lows now, I do believe, probably looking back on this now, we didn't quite make it to the upper 30s this morning. Maybe tomorrow we'll see some areas reach those upper 30s. Typically what you see after the passage of a cold front, now this isn't a set stone, this is just kind of a tip and trick I learned forecasting in college. The second night after the passage of that boundary is typically the cooler one. So we did have the first night as of this morning, the early morning hours, so kind of classifying when we see that morning low temperature. That's why I think I probably would have flip-flopped these numbers, maybe more so 40 today and probably some upper 30s, especially to the west and the northwest for tomorrow. And then we begin to increase. 45 on Thursday, still going to be chilly. 51 on Friday with more clouds in the picture and some rain, and then we are dropping them back down into the 40s. So cool mornings. Be sure that you definitely have some kind of layering ready to go as you head out the door. That is something that we probably forgot about with this stretch of very warm weather, highs in the 70s, flirting with 90, even morning lows starting out somewhere in the 60s or close to 70 in recent days. So let's pick up future view with the long range model. Friday at 5 a.m. still showing this line of broken rain. And the recent trend I've seen by analyzing these long range models, a lot more in depth, I guess you could say, with some extended forecasts. They are following a little bit behind the timing of what future view says, so maybe push this line a little bit farther down to the south. I think the rain will still kind of be widespread in our southern counties by about 5 a.m. We flash forward to Friday. If I keep saying Saturday, I apologize. You see the timestamp up there. So 7 p.m. as we go into Friday evening, mostly clear. So this is going to be a short-lived rainmaker. Hopefully we can keep it secluded to the morning hours. Then the rest of your Friday is shaping up nice and dry, and temperatures are going to be back on the decline after the passage of this boundary. But going into Saturday, this system does move off the Atlantic coast, a nice and dry Saturday. And Sunday has always been that day that has been the blemish. We talk about all weekend long being great. Move your outdoor plans to earlier in the weekend because we have a rain chance, the chance for severe weather on Sunday. Not the case this weekend. We are going to be nice and dry, mostly sunny all weekend long. And by the time we get into Sunday and Monday, still continuing the dry trend, number one, but we'll actually start the warming trend back up. So this goes all the way into Tuesday at 4 p.m. Nothing impressive according to these green and blue blobs. Nothing looks very organized. So we could have a dry stretch for maybe about 5 to even 7 days, maybe even longer than that as it does stand. Not seeing any big weather systems approach us. So I did want to preface that when our front does move through, no severe weather risk in central Georgia. However, I did mention that some areas to the north and the northwest, that system will be moving through during a warmer portion of the day, in fact, the warmest portion of the day. So there is a level 1 risk for areas of North Alabama, southern Tennessee, and then getting into east, northeast Mississippi. It's only a level 1, so still not seeing much that is very impressive with this system. I think if any severe weather outlooks are going to be issued, it might be farther up to the northeast of us, up into the mid-Atlantic, but not seeing any indications of that. That's just where things stand. So your 7-day forecast, if I have a chance to throw a master's background on a graphic, I'm definitely going to do it this week. One of the greatest weeks here in central Georgia and the entire state of Georgia. So let's break down your 7-day piece by piece. Upper 60s for highs today, and then getting into the low 70s, upper 70s on Thursday for the kickoff of the Masters tournament. That will be the first round. And then that morning rain chance on Friday, we may up the chances with it now that we're getting this in view of our short range models here on Future View, and maybe hearing a rumble of thunder, but I don't think I'm buying enough to put a lightning bolt on this and put a thunderstorm icon. We will dry out for the rest of your Friday. So the second half of Friday on throughout the entire weekend, trending dry, so any outdoor plans that you have this weekend are going to be good to go. We will drop the temperatures down after the passing of this secondary boundary. So 72 on Friday, 67 on Saturday, and you'll also note the morning lows still pretty chilly, 43 and 41 as you wake up Saturday and Sunday, but then the upward trend does begin. Upper 60s on Saturday, and we're all the way up to 82 by the time we get to next Monday. Nice and sunny skies will prevail. Not much to complain about with this 7-day forecast, and a well-warranted quiet stretch of weather after 2 weeks in a row that we've seen confirmed tornadoes here in central Georgia. And like I continue to say, it is so great to report that there have not been any injuries associated with those 3 tornadoes that did touch down. And the severe thunderstorm warnings obviously causing their fair share of damage with the straight line winds downing trees and resulting in some power outages. This quiet stretch of weather will continue to help with the cleanup if anyone is still doing that and dealing with the lingering impacts of these storms that we've had recently. So that's kind of an in-depth look at your forecast, 10:30 each day. So I know we've been fluctuating with the timing, 10 a.m., 10:30, 10:15. 10:30 each and every day. That's what we're going to shoot for. I'll be doing another one of those tomorrow at 10:30, and then Thursday I'm going to get an early start on pre-recording my weather segment that airs on 13 WMAZ Plus each and every weekend. So we will be doing that, but obviously trying to give you a daily stream with an in-depth forecast that you can go to in case you missed the morning show, in case you missed a cut-in or something, and you get your one-stop shop for all the weather that you need for the next week each and every day here on 13 WMAZ Plus. Thanks for joining in, and I hope you have a terrific Masters week, Central Georgia.